Have you ever been in a terrible slump? Like it's all just piling on and nothing seems to go right? I think pretty much everybody has felt that at some point in their lives. But what about the opposite? Every wave has to have a trough and a crest. So if you can fall into a slump, I wonder if it's possible to climb up a hump where things just seem to be working out for you. Today, I'm going to tell you how that's not only possible, but how it's achievable. Stick around. Welcome back to the Goodness Engine, where I make doing your good deed for the day easier than it's ever been before by pledging to donate all money generated by this channel. So just by sticking around, you're doing your good deed. Well done. I wanted to talk today about a few different concepts that really excite me, and how when they intersect, we can take control of our circumstances to create what I like to call the positive spiral. I'm going to be speaking in generalities in this video, so please feel free to take whatever points are useful to your situation. So what do I mean by a positive spiral? Well, I think we've all heard of somebody spiraling or being caught in a downward spiral, right? It's when their lives just seem to be going out of control due to a mix of bad decisions or poor circumstances. It's self-propellant. It's just one thing falling into the next until that person hits their proverbial rock bottom. But there's something important that a lot of people just don't know or don't talk about. And it's that the negative spiral, that slippery slope, it's a fallacy. It's a lie. It assumes the premise that there's some hand of destiny pushing you in a direction, like you're just falling into a black hole. But at any point, a person can choose differently. They can step outside their comfort, do something new, take agency, and stop that spiral in its tracks. Oftentimes it can be difficult, but maybe not as difficult as you might think. So people just consign themselves to what they perceive as the inevitable. So how do you jump out of a negative spiral and into a positive one? Well, the first step is always the hardest, as they say. There's always a barrier to entry, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about how there are numerous entry points into a positive spiral in just a bit. So if you're not comfortable coming at a situation from one side, maybe try from another that you're more comfortable with. But I think the easiest thing to do first is to set the stage with a basic understanding that everything will change. Everything will pass. Those emotions dragging you down, your own negative self-image, your relationships, your job, whatever. Circumstances are always temporary, and it doesn't have some unbreakable hold on your life. Next, you can hunt for the good stuff. Acknowledge that that thing that you feel is dragging you down isn't the whole picture, but just an aspect. It's important to take a moment to consider what's good and what's positive in your life, not only because it gives the negative a little bit less focus and less energy, but because it fills your cup more so that when you have to deal with the negative, you're in a better position. And do this often. Flex that muscle. Make it second nature. Gratitude can be like a deep well inside of us, and the more you draw from it, the easier it becomes to do so. So challenge yourself. See how deeply grateful you can be, even for the most inane seeming things. So let me give you an example in today's moment of gratitude. I have an index card here, right? Something that we see millions of, nothing to write home about. But how can I be grateful for this kind of inane seeming thing? Well, I look at it and I'm seeing a couple of different colors of dye. What did it take to create that dye? How many people were involved in that? I see the actual card itself. I see the tree that it took to mill that paper. I think about the hundreds of years that tree must have been growing and standing. And I can even go even further back and think about the millions of years of evolution that put that tree where it is and what it was. I think about the fact that somebody had to take their time to cut it down, and that it took a lot of invention to make the tools to do that, and then to mill it, and then to cut it, and to dye it, and to ship it, and to store it. There's so many different aspects of how this got into my life, and if I really take a moment, I can be grateful that I live in a place and a time where things like that are not only accessible, but we don't even think about them. Okay. So we've accepted that circumstances can change, and we've reframed toward a more positive mindset. The stage is set, so what's next? Well, let's take a look at how many ways we can actually affect positive change in our lives. These are the aspects of life which can contribute to a general sense of wellness. What I find really exciting is the interplay between them. For instance, if I eat well, my physical wellness improves. I feel good about that, so my emotional wellness improves. My self-image improves also, so that would be my interpersonal wellness, which then goes on to affect how I act in my relationships, and that improves my intrapersonal wellness. That improves my emotional life again in return. And I could go on with an almost endless yet realistic example of how many ways that small changes can cascade into bigger ones. When I told him about this idea several years ago, my father summed it up really nicely in saying that all ships rise with the tide. Sometimes it can be easiest to come at a problem from another angle, especially when an issue seems insurmountable to you. So try this approach. Improve some aspects of your life around the problem and see how it plays out. Do you have conflict at work? Maybe it's not best to take it head on. Worry about improving your self-image and see if that changes the way that you interact. Give yourself some distance by focusing on other important facets of your life, and give yourself the bandwidth to deal with that issue productively when you have to. You may find the sum total of good, the net balance, is far different from what it would have been had you taken on that conflict and let it take your focus as a lesser version of yourself. So therein lies the positive spiral. It's a change in circumstances that not only prevents some of life's stressors from occurring in the first place, but it makes you more capable of handling those stressors when they do arise. As an example, I made a budget, so I cut down on my eating out and ordering DoorDash, so I could afford an $80 oil change when my car needed one, and it didn't die on the side of the road. And then I didn't have to pay overdraft fees to the bank when I had to pay the tow truck. I like to think in potentials as well. What's the long-term value in seizing those little opportunities for positive change? How far can this divert your path over the course of a lifetime? I've made a representation of the way that I visualize the long-term impact of good actions. I call this the decision web, and you'll see why as we move forward. Now yes, this is an oversimplification, but you can expand on this idea however it makes sense in your mind. Remember that there are usually many more decisions we could make, good or bad. But as we move forward, try to apply the idea of the 9 pillars of wellness and just think of all the possibilities. To start, we're at a crossroads, and we're offered 3 choices. 1, a decision which doesn't take consideration of the outcomes of the choice, leads to an unhappier life. The second, the choice of inaction, offers nothing, but it takes nothing either. The third is a choice which is measured and intentional, and this leads us down the road to the happiest life. After we've made that choice, at some point down the road, we'll come to another crossroads. This could be a day later, a week, a month, a year, or even a decade, depending on the scope of the decisions that you're making. I like to apply this to my day-to-day actions so that I can keep my motivation and my momentum. However you visualize it though, you'll be in a position sometime down the road and you'll be offered similar choices. Now you'll notice that if we zoom in, every one of these decision points could be a new starting point of its own. So what's really empowering here is that even if you've made bad decisions in the past, there is still a path to happiness. Will it be optimal and ultimate? No. But trying to optimize your life can be a trap of its own. Just focus on what good you can do now and try to remain grateful. So as time goes on, you can see how widely these paths stray from one another. What I find awesome is that early changes don't have to be big. Imagine a golfer or an archer adjusting by only a few degrees. The effect downrange is huge. So that tells me, no matter where you are in life, the best time to start moving in the right direction, no matter how small, is now. But what about hardship? There are so many examples of bad fortune or just life happening that feel like they can knock us off course. Death of a loved one, sickness, loss of a job, breakups. Those things will always happen. We have to accept that, or we'll just become resentful and bitter towards those around us when they do. But I want to point out that if you've started from a good place, things can still turn out okay. If you have a bad breakup, but you've got a strong sense of self and a strong support network, you'll bounce back more quickly. Maybe your life won't be what it could have been, and that can be difficult to accept. Oftentimes, we don't agonize over what's actually happened because we know we can't change the past, but we mourn for the loss of the life we expected. In those times, take a moment to see the long game. All isn't lost. Even if you were in a rough place before the hardship, you can still turn things around. It'll take time, but just zoom out a bit. Another thing to consider is what happens when luck comes into the picture. The chances of winning the lottery are slim, yes, but at some point in life, I think most of us will find love. At some point, a lot of people will get a job they thought they were a long shot for. or they'll meet a new friend who gets them out of the house more. These things can knock you in the other direction, and if you're in a good place from the start, things might turn out better than you ever hoped. Meeting my wife is the best example I have for something like that. We got together after we both had hard breakups, but it showed me that sometimes, when you lose the things in life that aren't right for you, it's just clearing the field so you can see the better things. And the best thing is that you can be this boon for somebody else. That's what this whole goodness engine is about. So always meet the people around you with grace and positive intention. Eventually, that kindness will find its way back to you. So how do I sustain a positive spiral? This is a big question. How do you make lasting changes in your life? How do you stick with it? Well, I can't speak to anybody's individual resolve, but I'll review a few tools that have helped me in the past. So first is SMART goals. SMART stands for specific, measured, achievable, relative, and time-bound. Mainly, it's setting small, achievable things to do rather than one impossible task and giving yourself some bounds as to how and when you're going to do that. Next, reminders and alarms, organizational tools, calendars, whatever works for you. Me personally, I run my life on Post-it notes. If I didn't have them at work, I'd have probably been fired by now. Third, and this kind of feeds off the second, is making your environment as conducive to your goal as possible. So for instance, if you want to bike to work instead of driving in, the best thing to do for yourself is to remove barriers. So take your shoes and take your helmet and put it right next to your door as you're leaving. Make sure that you have a working bike lock so that you don't have to worry about it being stolen when you're at work. Make sure you have a change of clothes ready to go the night before so that you're not sweaty when you finally get to your office. So next, you're going to want to record those little wins somewhere so that you can look back and just see how far you've come. I liken it to flipping the pages of a book. You might not know how far you've gotten, but then when you close it, there's less left to read and more that you've already had behind you. So the last thing would be to celebrate those wins. Just make sure you do that in a way that's sustainable towards your goal. So as an example, if your goal is to lose weight, maybe don't make your celebrations food motivated. But there are a million different little things that you can do to give yourself some sort of positive incentive. So thanks for sticking with me today, and thanks for doing your good deed. If you want to supercharge your positive impact, set the world off on a little positive spiral, like the video, comment, subscribe, and share. Even if you don't, just share this message with your friends and family and be their support. You can never push this stuff on somebody because change has to be motivated internally, but maybe you can just give a little hope that it's possible at all. My question of the day: what's one small positive step you took today, and how many other pillars of wellness did that impact? Stick around for next week when I do my first fitness challenge. We're going to try to do 1,000 push-ups in an hour, so tune in to see if I fail miserably. Bye, everybody.